Hey Canucks fans, I got a question for you. If the Canucks win the Stanley Cup in a shortened season, does that taint or diminish the accomplishment at all in your eyes? I'm Clay Emo. I'm at Canuck Clay on Twitter. I'm at Clayton Emo on Instagram. I'm the founder of the GLCPC, the Good Looking Canucks Positivity Club, and this is my Canucks take, all in one take. It's Clay's Canucks commentary for Friday, March the 13th, also known as day 2 of no NHL hockey, also known, more importantly, as my lovely wife Gail's birthday. And thank you for all the greetings over Twitter today, or Facebook or Instagram if I'm friends with you there. And I brought it up yesterday as part of the YouTube live stream that I did. And thanks to everyone who remembered and who greeted her today via Twitter. And thanks to all of you who joined me last night. It was a lot of fun. It went by quickly. An hour went by very quickly, actually. I had no Sean or no Jake because they were bowling. Yet we did not run out of things to talk about, whether it was obviously the Vancouver Canucks, the paused NHL season, the coronavirus, the toilet paper situation, routers, banger dancing. We had a lot of fun last night talking about and a lot of things. You guys asked me a lot of good questions, and I think we had a lot of fun. So thanks again for joining me last night. Still going to try and keep up these those live streams going as long as we don't run out of things to talk about. So here's what I want to talk about today. And yes, this is day 2 of me trying to figure out things to talk about, but this one's kind of good. And usually I don't do a lot of speculative or what if or hypothetical posts or vlogs. Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes I think they come across a little too clickbaity or whatever. And that's just my own personal opinion. But I was thinking about this one today because I've heard people talk about it, and I thought about it as well, especially as we hope that the Canucks will resume play sometime later this spring. So here's, or this winter, this spring. No, this spring. We're almost at spring. So here's the question. If the Canucks come back, if the NHL comes back and they somehow truncate the season and the Canucks happen to win the Stanley Cup, they get into the playoffs and win the Stanley Cup in a shortened year, to you, does that diminish or taint's too strong a word, does that diminish the accomplishment in your eyes at all? Or do you give them full credit? So let's break this down a little bit, and then I'd love to get your opinion. There is a small chance that the NHL comes back. Actually, there's a chance that the NHL doesn't come back this season. So that's number one. There's a chance that the NHL comes back and they somehow fit in the rest of the regular season and a full playoffs, 4 rounds of 7 games each, best of 7, I should say. And I think we'd all agree that if they did a full season somehow and they did a full playoff somehow, maybe went to July and August, if they did that all and the Canucks won the Stanley Cup, of course, there'll be no diminishing that accomplishment, because it's the exact same as any other team on any other regular year. It's just that it took a little longer to play the season because they had a 4, 6, 8 week gap in the middle. Okay, so I think we'd agree on that. But what happens if, let's say, they truncate either the regular season, the points percentage, play-in games, whatever, and or they truncate the playoffs, i.e. Single elimination for the first couple rounds, best of 3s or best of 5s. So let's say anything short of 4 best of 7 rounds, and let's say the Canucks win the Stanley Cup. And I guess this goes by for any team, but if the Canucks win the Stanley Cup, in your eyes, does that diminish the accomplishment at all? Because on one hand, obviously, some people would be thrilled that the Canucks win the Stanley Cup, the first one in their history, and they won't care that it was 14 playoff wins instead of 16. Now that doesn't make any sense. But let's say it was a best of. Let's say it was 2 best of 3s and then 2 best of 7s. So let's say the Canucks win 2-2, 4-4. They win 12 playoff games instead of 16. Does that make it less of an accomplishment for you? Let's say it's a play-in game, or the first 2 rounds are single elimination, and then it's 2 best of 3s for best of 5s, for instance. So 1 win, 1 win, 3 win, 3 win. So let's say they only have to win 8 games. Does that diminish it for you? So I guess really, depending on how they structure it, whether it's single elimination, whether it's play-in games, whether it's best of 3, best of 5, best of 7, instead of 16 wins, right, 4 wins in each of 4 rounds, to make 4 times 4 equals 16. What's really the cutoff number for the number of wins in the playoffs where you would say, yeah, that's fine, that's still a good accomplishment? No, this isn't tainted. There doesn't have to be an asterisk. They're full value. Is it only the 16 wins for you? Or we say, no, if they win 14 or more or 12 or more, I still think they're full value for it. And so let's make this less about the Vancouver Canucks and let's talk about any championship team, because then I guess it makes it more objective. For a Stanley Cup winner, what's the number of games they need to win in the playoffs so for you give them full value? Obviously 16 is one of them. For you, is it 14? Is it 12? Is it 10? Is it even 9? Half of, or 8 or 9, half of the 16 that they need to win. And maybe that, I don't know if the number changes for you if you say it's the Vancouver Canucks. I don't know if you make that number a little bit lower just so the Canucks can win their first Stanley Cup. This is the way I feel. I think if it's 13 wins or more, maybe even 12 wins or more, I think that I'd be okay and give the Canucks full value for winning the Stanley Cup, because every other team would have had the same task ahead of them to win 12, 13, 14, 15 games. Let's say 13 and up, right? Anything less than that, well, let me map this out. If they went best of 3, best of 3, best of 7, or even best of 3, best of 5, best of 7, best of 7. So in the first case scenario, 2, 3, 4, and 4, you'd have to win. So if it went best 3, best of 5, best of 7, best of 7, you'd have to win 2, 3, 4, and 4. So what's that? That's 13 games. Okay. If you go 2 best of 3s, then 2 best of 7s, then you'd have to win 12 games. And then what happens if it was a best of 3, a best of 3, a best of 5? Oh, I just said that. What happens if it was single elimination, best of 5, best of 7, then you have to win 8 or 9. Okay, so that seems a little bit slight to me. I'd say 12 games or more for me is my cutoff. If the Canucks, or any team, but if the Canucks had to win 12 games in the playoffs, 12 through 16, then I would say they're still full value, and you could feel good that they ran they had to do what they needed to do to win, and that was a comparable achievement to a regular season. I think anytime you go 11 wins or fewer, that's when you're kind of like, still thrilled that the Vancouver Canucks won the Stanley Cup. And obviously I'd be thrilled. I think most people, they'd still go to the parade. They'd still be excited. I'd still be writing parody songs, writing poems. But I think 11 wins or fewer in the playoffs, I think it feels, I don't want to say cheapens it, because I think it's too strong of a word, but I think it does feel a little bit less. So that maybe if I had to absolutely pick a number, I would say 12 wins or more. And that's based on at least a series of single elimination, 2 best of 3s, a best of 5, and a best of 7. So 2 wins, 3 wins, and 4 wins. That gets you to 11. Maybe I think, no, maybe we're going to go 2 best of 3s, 2 best of 7s. So that's 2 wins, 4 wins, 4 wins. That's where I get my minimum of 12. I think that's what we want, is bare minimum 2 best of 3s, 2 best of 7s. Getting through that gives you 12 wins. And to me, that would be the bare minimum where you could say this is comparable to a regular 16-win Stanley Cup playoff run. So that's my humble opinion. I think 11 or fewer, it kind of makes it a little bit different in my eyes. But that's just my opinion. Single elimination would be exciting. I think the ratings would be through the roof. You could do something where you take wild card, basically the 7th, 8th, 9th team and 10th teams in the conference, and then have those 4 teams play down to 2. And then those are your 2 wild card teams. You could do that. That could build a lot of excitement. So technically, that's a playoff game even before the playoffs start. And then what do you do after how do you make the playoffs work? Do you go single elimination? Do you go best of 3s, best of 5s, best of 7s? So obviously, we don't know this right now. It's only been 2 days since the NHL announced or decided that they were going to pause the regular season. So obviously, a lot of this depends on whether or not they're even going to come back to play, and if they do, when are they going to come back to play? Because the longer, obviously, it takes for them to come back, the shorter amount of time they'll have to do the regular season and or playoffs. But I think it's a kind of interesting thing to think about. And obviously, we all hope for the best, but we're starting to learn more from the Vancouver Canucks as well. A lot of people are concerned about Vancouver Canucks employees, those that work in the arena. How will they be compensated? I talked about that in my vlog yesterday. So that we'll hear more from the Canucks at that time. We also heard from the Canucks that they will not be practicing. There'll be no practices during this time. So we also heard for ticket holders, whether you're a season ticket holder or you bought single game tickets, to hold on to our tickets for now, because they haven't come up with refund policy or whatever. I'm sure they don't want to make any promises or any decisions on that until they know if and when they are coming back, or when and if they are coming back to play. So a lot of uncertainty, and we knew that. We kind of acknowledged that yesterday when we first started to know that this was going to happen, is that they weren't going to have all the answers yesterday when they made the announcement. They had to make an announcement swiftly so people knew, so that people weren't panicked, and so teams and franchises and coaching staffs and fans knew where everyone stood. But now that they made the announcement, they can spend, and I'm sure they're right now as we speak, over the next week, they're going to start to talk about all of their contingency plans. What happens when we come back here? When's if we come back here? When's if we don't come back? When we come back, how does the regular season work? How do the playoffs work? How does draft work? How does free agency work? All those things they need to figure out. But my question to you today, what's the minimum number of wins that a team has to win in the playoffs, in a truncated season or not, to make it feel like it's still a full value Stanley Cup victory? And for me, I set that number at 12 wins. 12 wins or more, to me, that's 75% of what they would have had to do anyways. That is enough for me. Canucks fans, I'd love to know what you think. Is 12 too high? Is 12 too low? Are you saying, man, 16 games or bust? 16 wins or bust? Or are you saying, I don't care if it's only 4 wins. If the Canucks win the Stanley Cup, they win the Stanley Cup. So I think it's a cool thing to think about. So yeah, talk about how many wins would it take for the Vancouver Canucks to win in the playoffs to make it their full value for it. And I'd love to get your responses on this interesting, at least to me, interesting topic. Leave a comment below. I'll read, react, and reply. Subscribe if you like to. Like this video if you like to. Enjoy the day. God bless. Go Canucks, go.